Hello, and welcome to video 4 in our oral exams training series. This video will focus on the importance of growth mindset and share strategies for how you can provide effective and supportive feedback to students during an oral exam. After watching this video, you will be able to define growth mindset and explain how mindset impacts learning and motivation. Use the framework of growth mindset to identify ways to provide supportive and effective feedback during the oral exam session, and name some specific types of feedback to avoid during the oral exam. You've probably received a lot of feedback in your life from family members, friends, teachers, professors, and mentors. Feedback is crucial to learning as it gives us valuable information about our progress towards learning goals. Feedback also has a big impact on how we feel about our learning, the course material, and about ourselves as learners. You can probably think of a time that you've received feedback that made you feel supported, encouraged, and motivated. You may also be able to think of a time that feedback left you feeling discouraged and deflated. Take a moment to reflect. How did these different types of feedback impact you? How did the feedback make you feel? And how did you approach the task or class following that feedback? Now, because feedback is so important to learning and motivation, it's crucial for us to consider how we can give students honest feedback about their progress in a way that feels supportive, encouraging, and motivating. What does such feedback look like? And how can we approach giving effective, encouraging feedback during oral exams? A useful idea for us to have in mind is growth mindset. This idea comes from the research of Carol Dweck, a psychologist at Stanford University, who has spent her career studying the impact of mindset on learning, motivation, and behavior. Dweck uses the word mindset to refer to the beliefs that we have about our abilities and about ourselves as learners. In particular, she identifies two general types of mindsets that we can be in. In a fixed mindset, we believe that our intelligence, abilities, or talents in a certain domain are static and cannot change. This is the mindset at play when a student says, "I'm just not a math person," or when an instructor says, "Not all students have what it takes to learn this material." Dweck contrasts this with growth mindset, in which we believe that our intelligence and abilities can grow with learning, effort, and persistence. When we have a growth mindset towards ourselves in a domain, we are more likely to persist in the face of obstacles, more willing to take risks, and appreciate constructive feedback. Now, extensive research has shown the impact of mindset, what students believe about themselves, on their behavior, learning, and motivation. Another important set of research has looked at the impact of instructor beliefs on student outcomes. This research has shown that students have higher achievement and report more positive experiences in courses taught by instructors who have a growth mindset orientation towards their students' abilities. Studies have also shown that students pick up on implicit messages in the feedback they receive from instructors and teaching assistants, and are more encouraged and motivated by feedback that communicates a growth mindset towards their progress in the class. This body of research tells us that it's important for us to provide feedback that is honest, useful, and communicates to students that we believe in them and their ability to continue to learn and grow in our domains. But what does this look like in practice? First, research shows that process-oriented feedback, feedback in which we focus on the student's learning or thought process, can be an effective way of communicating growth mindset. For instance, if a student provides an incorrect response, you can highlight for them the aspects of the problem that they did understand and encourage them to consider parts of their thinking that may be off. For instance, you might say, "You're using the correct equation. Can you explain to me what each of the variables represent?" As another example, if a student doesn't know how to begin an answer, you might help them with the first step. For instance, you might say, "Okay, let's start by defining a key term. How would you define that term? Please feel free to use your notes." During the exam, it's great to provide students with ongoing encouragement. For instance, you might say things like, "Good job," and "Nice work on that response." This helps to maintain a friendly tone and acknowledge students' efforts during the exam. However, there are a couple of things to avoid when giving encouragement and validation. First, avoid praising effort that isn't tied to learning. For instance, if a student tells you that they studied a lot before the exam, but they experience major struggles while responding to questions, don't say, "Good job studying." This can actually have the opposite impact that we want and leave students feeling embarrassed and even belittled, like you're being sarcastic. Instead, you might say, "Let's talk about how you studied for this exam. Can you tell me what strategies you used?" You might then be able to share some study tips that you think would be helpful, or invite the student to follow up with you in office hours. Second, if a student is struggling, we may want to comfort them. For instance, we might say something like, "It's okay, don't worry about it. This exam is only worth 2% of your grade." Now, this kind of feedback can often have the opposite impact that we intend and leave students feeling unmotivated and like you don't believe in their ability to learn and improve. While some comforting words can be nice, it's important that we don't only focus on comforting students, and that the core of our feedback focuses on the learning process and identifies useful next steps for students to progress in their learning. So far, we've focused on how to provide encouraging feedback to students who might be struggling during the exam. However, it's equally important to consider the feedback that we provide when students respond correctly or ace the exam. It's important to communicate growth mindset here as well, as it is effective in helping all students feel motivated and invested in learning. In this case, the same principle applies. Focus on providing feedback that highlights the student's thought process or the specific learning they demonstrated. So when a student gives a great response, instead of saying, "Good job, that was a perfect answer," you might say, "Nice work, you did a great job explaining the assumptions that you made on this problem." If a student finishes the oral exam early, you might have a bonus question on hand to challenge them to continue to think deeply about the content. If you use one of these questions, make sure to let the student know that you're giving them an extra challenge. Another option, if you finish early, is to take the couple of extra minutes and ask the student about their career goals or interests related to the course. Each of these strategies communicates to students that they still have the capacity to grow, even after mastering the material being assessed on the exam. So to summarize, feedback has a huge impact on learning, motivation, and how students feel about themselves. In all of our interactions with students, we should be mindful of the implicit messages that our feedback may send, and be sure that our feedback communicates a belief in all of our students' abilities to continue to grow and deepen their understanding. By focusing on students' learning process and having a growth mindset orientation, we can provide feedback that is honest, useful, and leaves students feeling motivated and believing in themselves as learners. Now, finally, we want to remind you that you are also a learner. As you prepare to give oral exams, remember, just like your students, your skills and comfort with administering oral exams will grow with time and patience. So don't stress too much if things aren't perfect or if you make a mistake. It's all part of the learning process. All right, so to finish up, please take a few minutes to reflect on this question about the content from this video and record your response on our Google form. In this question, you'll think about a scenario. Imagine that you're administering an oral exam and the student has struggled to answer questions correctly. They've needed many hints and you've explained multiple course concepts to them to help them through the questions. The student has been engaged and appears to have learned quite a bit during the exam and expresses appreciation for your guidance. As you're wrapping up, the student asks, "How did I do?" What do you say to the student? Thank you for watching, and please remember to submit your reflection responses before continuing to the next video. See you then.